I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you for joining us for one of our talks today. Today, we are joined by the wonderful actors, creators, and executive producers of Hulu's PEN15, Anna Konkle and Maya Erskine. And I wanted to talk about tonally the way that you write this show because there's so many tonal shifts within every single scene because it's reflective authentically of the way that you experience emotions at that specific age, where the tiniest thing can just flip you into completely different spaces. And I was interested in kind of the art of writing that way, and if that was something that came very naturally when you first started working on the scripts for this show, or if that's something that you feel has really evolved and developed within your style together over the years.
That's such a good question. That's a little hard to answer. I think when we began writing, way before the writer's room and at the kind of the beginning of the idea and writing just like in the living room, it was definitely broader. And then as time went on and we grew older and we wanted to make sure that we were as invested as ever in the stories and the ideas, we started to realize that we wanted that it would be the most effective, we thought, if it was like the most grounded. But there's also an absurd sensibility, I think, that we both share. So teetering that line after we decided that, okay, we're going to like make everything like a memory and as grounded as possible, that kind of naturally followed. I think, like you said, I think it's sort of natural to that age. And maybe it's a little bit of our sensibility too. I don't know. What do you think, Mai?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, we also talked about it as being sort of operatic. Like when you're that age, everything is very dramatic and you have the highest highs, the lowest lows, and the smallest thing could ruin your life forever. It's full of sort of these dramatic statements, but I feel like that sort of lends itself to those bigger, absurd, surreal moments that we have throughout the series of just, anytime Maya or Anna feel anything that feels extreme, sort of like in a musical, you break out in a number or a song if you can't really express it through words. That was something that interested us in terms of the absurdist moments. But yeah, I think, Anna, that's exactly right. It's just trying to be as grounded as possible and be as true to life as possible, which is full of those shifts,
It's also such an interesting way to write a show where you're having to write really dramatic beats and tensions. And yet when you step back and look at the things that are happening, sometimes it is really high stakes, but sometimes it's very small things that need to feel incredibly high stakes. And so is there a difference in the challenge of that, because it's very much about writing to the character's experience instead of writing to the action a lot of time, actually?
Yeah. I think that's kind of a natural way that we found we broke story, which was the psychology or the emotions of the characters. And very often that led us on a path of the minutia of emotions. And that because it was the emotion that we were following, it didn't dictate if the plot point was like the actual event was large or small. And I think just naturally the things that interest us more are the moments that like don't become tropes or aren't like the most obvious events of a script or a story or a lifetime where you're like, well, that was stupid. That isn't important, but I still think about it every day and I'm 34. You're like, that little feeling stuck with me in some way or elicits something. And so let's tell that story, even if the plot around it feels small.
Yeah. And you were both bringing up, the idea of how everything needs to feel very grounded. And that's really what roots it, even when it is kind of absurdist comedy within the show. And I think that's why it works so well. And a lot of people have kind of commented on the second season having a darker tone, but it actually feels like there's a much more grounded tone to the second season in the depth that you're able to bring. Like if we look at the entire Yuki episode, that's a very different aesthetic approach and type of emotional beat, the cancer walk episode as well. So it really feels like there's a lot more opportunity to live and breathe in that for much longer because you're not trying to introduce people to those moments. And was that an intention that you set out into this season with, or was just that a natural byproduct of the stories and the moments that you wanted to tell?
You ask really great questions, by the way. I just have to put that out. For the second season, we did want to have the girls be exposed to more mature content and go through experiences that they might not be quite ready for. And so first part of second season, we wanted them to try on different identities as sort of a means of escaping themselves, escaping the pain that they're going through. Not wanting to be like their mothers. And so they try on different identities. And the final part is sort of the girls entering teendom. And I think that was exciting to us because we weren't ever going to have them age past the age of 7th grade. So we needed to see them evolve. And one of those ways is, having high school boyfriends. And with this last part of the season, we were given more room because we had done all the first to be able to have like a full episode dedicated to Yuki, or, facing death for the first time, and letting that run over the course of 2 episodes, and how it might start in one, but them being exposed to it, and then how they deal with the grief of it in an episode later.
Yeah. And speaking of the Yuki episode in particular, what was the genesis of the dance sequence between her and her ex? Because I thought that was such an emotionally beautiful moment within the show.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I think I've always wanted to put a dance into any piece of work that I'm doing. And so it's a bad answer, but that ever since I watched, like Buffalo 66, I always loved when there would just be this extreme moment of someone dancing to express their love for someone or what they're going through at that moment. So I really wanted to see my mom have an exaggerated moment. At one point, she was going to be dressed in, I think, kimono, and it was going to be reflective of when she was a kid and used to do a dance. I have this picture of her in one. But yeah, we didn't do that. We just made it more of a sexual, I shouldn't say sexual with my mom, but a romantic dance.
We made it more sexual.
Made it more
No, yeah, and it's definitely a moment of them, falling in love in a way, or that's how it can feel to me sometimes when I'm watching. But yeah, that moment's so beautifully directed. You did so incredible.
Oh, thanks.
This season also creates a lot more scenarios and situations where you're taking them outside of their own bubble and outside of high school in a lot more moments as well. Was that something where you just really wanted to be able to have that experimentation in really getting to see different sides of these characters? Who are they when they start dating a couple of older guys? Who are they when they go on the cancer walk episode and they meet these other kids that they don't know for the first time? Who are they presenting to be? So it really gives you these different dynamics, because there's always this balance between who they want to be and who they are, that there's this push and pull between those two spaces, and obviously different characters bring out different sides of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think sort of what dictated where we told the stories was the themes that we wanted to definitely tell. And, in terms of the sort of sexual side of things of Anna and Maya grappling with that, and there's sort of an introduction to drugs in a way. Death certainly is a theme. Socioeconomic status. We just kind of followed where that took us, and it ended up taking us out of the school a lot of times.
And when you have episodes like the Anna modeling audition episode, are you consciously thinking about the wider dialogue between the character moment? Because obviously there's a lot of discourse that comes out of an episode like that, and predatory behavior within that industry, the fact that it's so clearly a scam that she's walking into. And then even when Maya comes in and it's just like, something doesn't feel right, I'm going to get her out of the room. And so there's so many beats that you manage to approach within that episode, and every episode in different ways. And is that a real consciousness, going back to what you were just saying about thinking about the themes that you want to approach? Or are you also thinking about that wider context and dialogue?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talk about holding up a mirror to the experience of being 13, and we try to tell, full arc with those stories, but at the very least, we want to be honest about what the experiences of 2 girls, 2 women, and growing up and coming of age. And, through writing it, there's that realization of, wow, this happened all the time. you know, of whether it was the real predatory behavior, even from just, you know, being in 7th grade or being in 8th grade, and you know, someone driving by and beeping or saying, you know, and you're like, oh, that's an adult man, you know. I mean, that is a real experience. And when that sort of dawns on you, I think as you get older and when we're in the writer's room, it's just kind of confirms that you have to, you know, write to it and show it. But it's a complicated thing to try to write about too.
I would say that those were the memories. We always talk about how middle school is so traumatic for us that for some reason, Anna and I have the memories like imprinted in our brains, like right up front. Some people block it out. We're like, no, we really remember those. But the ones that I don't remember are those all the microaggressions, all the micro predatory behavior, like any of that. It sort of dawned on us, like you said, in the writer's room, and it'd be like, oh shit, yeah, that happened to me too. Oh my God, that happened 10 times. I can't believe, you know, and it definitely, like you said, affirms the need to like put it into our show.
Yeah. And speaking of the writer's room, when you reached the point in developing the show where you were putting together and building a writer's room for the first time for it, what were the things that you were really looking for beyond just the ability to write well and to really understand the characters? Because it is a story and characters that are coming from such a personal place. And so I imagine that that's a huge thing to kind of hand that over to other people in a writer's room at the beginning.
I mean, at least, you know, the second season, when we were able to hire writers and have more writers, it was, oh, is that a cat? Yeah. So cute. When we were hiring writers, Anna says this a lot, but it's, we would require of them to be vulnerable with us and share their secrets and sort of go to a place of expressing their innermost shameful experiences or things that they were embarrassed about. And just an ability to be open and vulnerable was really appealing to us, I would say. And obviously, you know, a tone that could come into sort of match our tone, and sensibility, and also just different perspectives. You know, we are two females and we had a third male creator, and we were just looking for other voices as well to add into that.
Yeah. And with that idea of really kind of sharing very vulnerable things, as actors in the show as well, it feels like these roles in particular really ask you to just shed any element of self-consciousness with a lot of the things that you're writing into the show and a lot of the performance moments. Was that something that came easily, or was there a bit of a journey and path to reaching that space as actors in the series?
Definitely a journey. I mean, you know, beginning season 1, felt the feeling was just being naked on set every day in front of everybody, and then realizing after we were done editing that then not only were we, you know, did I feel naked in front of the crew, but now it's going to be whoever watches it, because it's such a vulnerable experience to be in our 30s and be like, hey, we're not going to try this as a sketch. We're going to try to honestly, earnestly play 13, and we may fail really hard, but you can only do that through not making a joke about it. So we have to try that. It made it a lot easier doing it with Maya. I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. Same. It gave me like, because I would see her and be like, okay, she's pulling it off. That's fine. She's there. I'm just going to be back. Like, it's fine. And then as time went on, it's gotten easier to just say the point of it is that we're rejects. And if there are more wrinkles, we look more rejecty and alieny, and that works, and just sort of accepting and embracing it.
I have a video of the minute it came out, and sort of Anna and I freaking out in our hotel room of like, what have we done? Like, what is happening? What is going on? Because our innermost secrets, things that when we're talking about it in production, when we're filming it, like masturbating, all of those things felt fine to me. But as soon as it was out there, it was like, oh, now I can't take this back. It is out there. I've put this out, be chased down with fire sticks, but it didn't turn out that way. Thank God.
And when it comes to them exploring their sexuality within the show, obviously everybody knows at this point you have adult stand-ins, and there's so much creativity that goes into the directorial style of how those films are those scenes are filmed. And with this season, with those experiences going a little bit further for each of them, what was kind of the creativity that you really had to find in thinking about new and different ways to approach it directorially with the filmmakers who were working on the series? Because there's a lot of potentially much more explicit things, and where you place the camera, again, just brilliantly brings us into those moments and still never shies away from it.
Yeah, we were pretty involved and obsessive about it, as were all of the directors. We're very aware that we want to tell it as, truthfully as possible. Well, some things you can't hold up a mirror to, and nor do we want to. So it's like a fun and scary dance of trying to tell explicit stories honestly. Something that really helped to do that was the first time we cast other adults in the younger age bracket. So the guys playing our high school boyfriends are much older. So that really freed, and that was always the idea, actually, that once we got to this kind of part of the series when there was more sexually explicit things, that we would cast other adults so that we could show the truth in a way that was, that worked.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of spoiler territory in talking about the final episode of the season. But I wanted to talk about the moment where Maya and Sam, played by Taj Cross, kiss, because I thought there was such an interesting beat in that he pauses and asks if it's okay before he actually kisses her. And that was a really lovely moment, especially after watching the relationship dynamic that she's just been experiencing. Why was it important to you to have that specific line of dialogue and that moment within it?
Anna, did we write him saying, "Is it okay if I?" Or was that
it was in the script, or we thought of it on set? Like it was a specific conversation. I remember, especially with obviously consent being such a part of the conversation these days, and I've been having the experience of rewiring my own brain, going back into my own sexual history and kiss history and all that, and going like, oh my God, no one ever asked me, especially for a kid. And by the way, what's really crazy is I had been brainwashed in my, patriarchal town that if someone had asked me if it was okay, I would have been like, just kiss me. Just don't ask me. Just do it. And in retrospect, how sad that is. And I'm sure on the other side that I would, if it was reversed, asked a guy, because I'd been so insecure and been like, is it okay? Are you going to reject me? Anyway. Right. So that all led to a conversation of, really reflecting about consent and stuff, and the questionable position that Maya had just been in the series with her ex at the, by that time. And then, with Sam making sure that there was consent,
Consent. Also just, we don't do it often, but this was one of those circumstances where we're like, we're going to rewrite history. Maya just did something sexually before even getting her first kiss, and we can't end that way. We need to have her have a beautiful first kiss. I didn't experience a first kiss like that. I don't think Anna did, as well as witnessed by the first season. And I think it was something that we felt important, to put a sort of magical, innocent, consensual, beautiful first kiss.
And you were both mentioning earlier how when you made the first season, you just kind of came to the table with, if this is the only season that we get to make, if nobody watches it, if people don't respond to it, then we're going to make the show exactly the way that we want to. What was kind of the ethos and the way of thinking that you both came to the table for season 2 for both of the installments with?
Such a good question. Yeah, I think that, so going into the second season and sort of both parts of the second season, we knew we wanted to look at the firsts that were sort of emotional, like season 1 were sort of more obvious plot firsts that we want to talk about in a non-obvious way. But second season and both sort of installments of it, we wanted to look at sort of emotional firsts that you sometimes miss. And so, like Maya was saying, we did that a lot through identity in the first part of the second season. And there was some parental dynamics and stuff. But then the last season, we talked a lot about like, what are the events that happen, you know, at that age that sort of slip by you. And like, there's existential, you know, like grappling with God, existential crises that, I mean, I still have it, but it began at that age, you know, and the abstractness of death, and where did that grandparent go? And is it even possible to process it at that age or now? You know, it's like wanting to kind of grapple with, and then and sexual things for the first time, and consent, and the gray area of consent, and, you know, things that feel, you know, still very, very relevant to me as an adult, things that I'm still grappling with, that first presented themselves at that age. So we knew that we wanted to sort of deal with more mature themes and not kind of undercut that age of like what kids are really dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's such a wonderful answer. And the second season, just honestly, every single episode just keeps getting better and better and better. And I'm so excited for everybody to see the second half of this season. Thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to talk all about it today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.